Okay guys, so I've been testing builds, team interactions, and all sorts of reading on the main forums, trying my absolute hardest to make sure that this is the only Ganyu guide that you didn't know you needed. I'm gonna be going pretty in depth, or at least as in depth as my knowledge is possible. If you'd leave a like or sub to the channel, that would be amazing in supporting the channel and supporting me and making more guides like this for you. Okay, let's get into this because there's a pretty good amount to cover. First off, we need to be talking about her talents, weapons, artifacts, and stat priority. For talents, we all know that Ganyu has an insane scaling on her charge shots. That is what makes people think that she is one of, if not the best unit in the game in terms of damage output. Her elemental skill is the best taunt in the game, being very tanky and honestly dealing a pretty good amount of damage. Last thing, you'll level up, but nonetheless can do big damage. And then her elemental burst, which does a really good amount of damage, since it has a 15-second cooldown and a 15-second duration. So yeah, you can have Ganyu permanently bursting all fight, which gets really insane when we look at her other talents. So for 70 talent, Undivided Heart, after firing a Frost Flake arrow, the crit rate of the subsequent Frost Flake arrows and their resulting bloom effects is increased by 20% for 5 seconds. Basically, for existing, she gets a free 20% crit rate, which is absolutely massive and makes building her way easier. Her other talent, Harmony Between Heaven and Earth, is almost just as insane. Celestial Shower, your elemental burst, grants a 20% cryo damage bonus to active party members in the AoE. This is an insane ability since, like I mentioned, Ganyu Burst is basically permanently up the entire fight, so you will always have an additional 20% cryo damage bonus as a pure cryo damage dealing DPS. Her final talent, which is just a flavor talent for all the characters, is Preserve for the Hunt, which refunds 15% of the ore used when crafting bow type weapons at the blacksmith, which is nice but mostly forgotten about. As you can tell from my levels, you want to prioritize your normal attacks, then your elemental burst, and then your elemental skill. You can honestly just leave the elemental skill at level 6 if you need to work on other characters, or go higher with it if you want, because the scaling is pretty good and it does deal solid damage while also just becoming tankier taunt utility. For weapons, she can use a lot of the bows in the game. Almost Bow is her best in slot. Polar Star is pretty good. Thundering Pulse, Skyward Harp, Blackcliff Warbow, Prototype Crescent, and the Hamayumi Bow are all great weapons for Ganyu. You can consider the Stringless if you want to run Support Ganyu, but Support Ganyu is pretty scuffed, but you can play your characters however that makes you the happiest. For artifacts, Ganyu can use Wanderer's Trope, which is probably the better of the three for Melt Ganyu, Blizzard Strayer, which is the best for freeze comps like Morgana, and Shiminawa, which is just a general all-round set that can perform well in both freeze and Melt Ganyu teams, and I will have the differences in damage for you guys to see for yourself to think on which one you want. It's a little unfair towards my Wanderer's set since my Shiminawa set and Blizzard Strayer set have about 20% more crit damage, but I'm still working on it, and I'll have that rolling so you guys can see the damage for yourself. For stats, you want to go for crit damage, then attack percent, then crit rate, and then you can go elemental mastery or energy recharge, whatever you feel you need for the team comp that you're playing. Since Ganyu gives herself 20% crit rate, we can feel free to go lower than we need on most characters for crit rate, and you can aim for the ranges of 50 to 60% and not worry about it. Unless you're going for Blizzard Strayer, then you can go lower. Okay, so now let's talk about Melt for just a little bit here, because Miss Ganyu here has a very broken interaction with Melt. So Ganyu's arrows will have the melt damage on both parts, and I'll be showing this on screen that both parts proc melt, most likely because it's one arrow, so the attack itself is probably coded to interact as one attack, even though it deals damage more than once. Either way, this double proccing of melt on one arrow is what makes Melt Ganyu absolutely insane. Another thing that I want to show here is that Ganyu Burst does snapshot. So if you don't know what snapshotting is, to be as simple as possible, snapshotting just means that certain bursts in the game keep a buff that they get during the burst for the entire duration, regardless if the buff itself has expired. For example, I'll show Ganyu's burst solo. Now Ganyu's burst with Bennett's burst buff. Now we know how much damage her burst does with Bennett and without Bennett, so I will use her burst halfway through Bennett's, and we can see that even though the Bennett's void circle is gone, the burst is still doing the same damage because it has snapshotted Bennett's buff for the entire duration, even though the Bennett buff itself has expired. And now we can see some damage comparisons for Melt Ganyu between Wanderers and Shiminawa. So here's a small little trick for my mouse and keyboard homies, because I don't play on controller, so I don't know any tricks for controller, and I don't know if there are any tricks for controller. But for keyboard, we have a few things we can do to get our arrows ready faster. So as we see here, after Ganyu fires an arrow, she has an animation where she draws back another arrow before charging it, and we can get past this. If you hold left click instead of press R, you shoot the arrow. Simply let go of left click and then hold again, and you'll bring it back up faster than if you were to be an R and pull the arrow back. If you want to get a little more technical, and be warned, I can't do this consistently because I'm kind of bad at it, but if you press R pretty quickly twice, as soon as you shoot your arrow, you can instantly bring the bow back, skipping the animation of letting it go down and skipping the animation of pulling the arrow back. This is faster than if you were doing the left click method, but it's a lot more annoying to do for an extended period of time. But honestly, it's fun to throw in every now and again to mix up your normal gameplay loop of shooting arrows while just sitting in the R aim stance. So with all this out of the way, what team comps do I recommend for Ganyu? And honestly, as much as I hate this answer, it depends. Well, it does depend on you. if you're less confident in your aim, then honestly, freeze is really nice and comfy because you can't miss if things don't move. If you are confident with your aim and want to see big numbers, then melt is the way to go, and honestly, it's my preferred because sometimes I'm not feeling the slower, less interactive freeze style, but sometimes I do when I'm feeling lazy and just want to farm things. For actual comps, for Melt Ganyu, you can use Ganyu, Bennett, and Zhongling and let the force slot be flex between something like Zhongli for his shield and shred, or Jean on a 4-piece for Descent Bennett rare. So, like I ran in the video, the BB Shred for some more damage, and the amazing damage and healing Jean brings with her as a unit. There's also Morgana comp for those that still love Morgana comp, which consists of Ganyu, Venti, Diona, and Mona. But you can change this team around depending on who you have. For example, you can replace Venti with Kazuha, Mona with Kokomi, or Diona with something like Shinhe or even Ayaka. It's not a meta comp, but a fun freeze comp I play often is Jean, Ganyu, Ayaka, and Mona. Also, just use whatever set you have the best subsets for, because again, you just need 50 to 60 crit rate for Shimenawa or Wanderers. And for Blizzard, you can drop down to as low as 20 to 30% since you not only have Ganyu's self crit buff, but Blizzard Strayer access as well to squeeze in more crit damage. This is pretty much all I know when it comes to Ganyu, guys, and if I missed anything, please let me know in the comments. I know I jumped ship from being a Xiao main to Ganyu main pretty quick, but it's been a very long time since I finally got to play an archer based character since the early stages of Genshin when Amber was viable-ish on low level targets, and I love the actual archery playstyle. I know it's boring to a lot of people, but it's really satisfying for me. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about Ganyu. Do you think she is fun to play, or do you play her because she is just really strong, or do you just not play her at all? If you pull for her, let me know if she came home for you, because I genuinely hope that all Ganyu and Zhongli wanters have become or will become Ganyu and Zhongli havers this patch. If this guide was helpful, please consider leaving a sub to the channel to see what future content I post over Genshin Impact, and if you liked the video, leave a like because it really helps me out. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I will see you in the next video.